In this video, we are going to create a full stack web application using .NET and Angular. It is going to be a basic CRUD application where we are going to perform some operations like create, read, update and delete. Now let's talk about tools we need for this tutorial. First thing, we need a Linux or Mac or Windows, whatever you prefer. I'm using Windows, but Linux and Mac is also fine because .NET and Angular run in all these three operating systems. Next thing, you need to install .NET 9 SDKs. But if you already have installed Visual Studio in your system, Visual Studio 2022, then .NET 9 SDK have pre-installed in your system. You can just check out .NET version. So if it says 9.03003 or anything higher than 9.0, then you are fine. If you don't have installed Visual Studio, then you have to install .NET SDKs separately. But Visual Studio works only in Windows. So if you are using Mac or Linux, then you need to install .NET 9 SDKs. Next thing we need is Node.js. Make sure you have installed Node.js because to install Angular, you need to install Node.js first. After installing Node.js, you need to install Angular 20 and it is the latest version at this point of time. After that, let's talk about the database we are using. I am using SQLite in this tutorial because it is easy to configure. Basically, it comes in every system, so you do not need to install it explicitly. So it is much easier to work with, but you can easily replace SQLite with Visual Studio or with SQL Server, Postgres or MySQL or even Oracle because of Entity Framework. Entity Framework make this process very easy, so don't worry about it. Entity Frameworks works almost same with every database. Next thing we need is a code editor. I am going to use VS Code for both backend and frontend. Some people prefer, not some, most of the people prefer Visual Studio 2022 for their API development. The reason I am not using Visual Studio in this tutorial because Visual Studio only works in Windows, and if I am using Visual Studio, then this tutorial might be feel little bit trickier for other users who are using Linux or Mac. So if I am using VS Code, then this tutorial can be followed by every user irrespective of the operating system they are using. Okay, so let's get it started. So let's clear it out. Let's create a new folder. So mkdir .NET full stack demo cd .NET full stack demo. Now here we are going to create both of our projects like backend and frontend. So first we are going to start with backend. So first we are going to create a solution file .NET new sln. O means output folder, and the name of folder will be, let's name it Person CRUD. Okay, so let's move into this directory Person CRUD, and let's create a new project here .NET new, let's name it Person CRUD also, or you can just name it PersonCRUD.api if you want to be more explicit. And we haven't defined a template name here, so it should be web API and it should be O means output folder. Name of the folder will be PersonCRUD.api, and here our web API project will be installed. It will create a minimal API project, and if you type here use controllers, it will create a controller based API project, but I'm not going to use any of them. I'm just going to use web. It means it will create a web application which will be a blank web application. So it won't be either a web API project or MVC project. It is nothing. It is just a blank blank ASP.NET web application. So let's create this one, and you can see ASP.NET Core empty was created successful. Now we need to register this project to our solution. For that we need to type .NET sln add and Person..API / Person.API.cs proj. So it is successfully registered. Now let's see. Okay, so let's open this project in VS Code. For that we need to type code dot, press enter, and it will open this project in the VS Code. So our project has been created, and before doing anything, let me show you one thing. We need to install this extension called C#DevKit, and it is not a free extension, but it is similar. It has similar license like Visual Studio. It is free for individual developers or open source creator, something like that. So you can use it if you are individual developer. We only need this extension to develop our APIs. So once you have installed C#DevKit extension, you will notice that you will have this solution explorer. This thing only visible when you have installed C#DevKit, otherwise you will only see this explorer. So let's expand this application and let's see what is inside. So here we have our solution file. So it basically contains the application which we have registered in this solution. So this time in this application we only have one project, which is Person.CRUD.API. If we have multiple projects, then they would be appear here, and bunch of other stuff that I don't really understand. So I'm going to close it, and here you will see one more file, Person.CRUD.API.cs proj. Basically it is a CS proj file for this Person.CRUD API project. It is a XML file where we have defined something like a target framework, .NET 9, and it will also include other things like the libraries we are using in this project. So in the future we will install few external libraries, then those will be appear here. Next thing is app settings.json, and here we basically define our connection strings and other secrets like JWT related stuff. And this thing is app settings.development.json. Basically we define similar things here like connection string, but it is for the dev environment and it is for the production environment. If we go here in the properties, you will see launch setting.json, and basically we have defined our launch setting here, like when we run our project, so where it is going to be launched and at what URL or application it going to listen at. So we have two profiles here. One is HTTP, so our application URL is this one for HTTP and this one for HTTPS, and these are bin and object folder. So they basically contain the binaries when we build our project or publish our project. So it is just a blank project, it does not contain anything else these files. So if we open this program.cs file, you'll see it have bare minimum boilerplate. So at the first step we are just creating the web application builder, then we are creating a web app in this step, and here we are just creating an endpoint, a mineral API endpoint for this path, which is just saying hello world, and we do not need this. So let's delete this guy. So basically we just have 3 lines in our application. Let's see how we can communicate with database. To communicate with database, we have basically three ways. So first one is ADO.net, where we basically create connection, open connection, fire some SQL queries, and that's it. It is a very verbose process and it is not that much developer friendly. So it was a older way of doing things. So it was a very popular before the introduction of entity framework or dapper. I'm not sure we have something like ADO.net for SQLite or not, but it is definitely for the SQL Server databases. And the second approach we have is dapper, in which we talk with database with raw SQL queries, but it is much easier than using ADO.net, and it is a very popular approach in modern development. So that is also a good option. The third approach is entity framework, which is the very popular approach to talk with a database. So entity framework is an object relational mapper. Instead of doing raw SQL queries, we have some methods through which we can communicate with database. So like we have add method, which adds data to the database. We have update method, which updates the data. We have remove method, which removes the data. We have to list or find to get one record from the database. It increases the development speed, but it has its own drawbacks and own advantages. So every one of them have their own advantages and own disadvantages. So we are going to use entity framework in this project. To work with entity framework, we need to install a few packages. So open the integrated terminal. You can go here, view, and you will see option here, terminal. We need to visit a directory where our csproj file is located. So it is not here, so we must visit here Person.CRUD.api. If we type ls, then you can see we have here it is, Person.CRUD API.cs proj. So either you can do stuff here or you can use the external terminal like I am going to use. So here just type cd person.crud.api ls, and you can see we have our csproj file here. So we need to install a few packages: dotnet add package, microsoft.entity framework core.sqlite. So for SQLite we have this package. If we are using SQL Server, then we will be using this package, and for others like Postgres we have different packages. So this step varies for every database. So I'm going to use SQLite because I'm going to use SQLite database in this project. Next package we need is this one, and this package is needed for tooling like entity framework core tooling. So let's install this. Without this package you won't be able to run commands like .NET migrations add or .NET database update. Without this package these commands are not going to work. So we are done here, and if we go here, let's see here in the, where is it, yeah, this one, csproj file. You can either directly go here or you can press Ctrl P, P for parrot, Ctrl P, and you can search here. You can directly search here csproj, and you will see we have this csproj file, and here we have bunch of new lines, and in the new line, in these lines you can see we have this Microsoft.entity framework core.design and this one. So it indicates that we have successfully installed our packages. So go here and shrink this thing and go to this solution explorer, and here let's create a folder named models, and inside this folder we are going to create a new class. So click on this icon, new file, select class and name it person. Okay, so let's remove this thing and let's add two properties, press prop and tap id, and let's copy this line, string first name. Let's type here string.empty because it is saying that non-nullable property first name must contain a non-null value. Either we have to type this question mark here, which indicates it's a nullable field, or otherwise we have to assign some value to it. So I'm going to assign a value like this, string.empty, and we are going to copy this property. To copy in Visual Studio Code or in Visual Studio, we have shortcuts like if I click here and press Ctrl C, press Ctrl V, it is going to copy the whole line. Let's change it to last name. So I'm just going to use these three properties. So this class is our domain model, which corresponds to the table. So in future we are going to create a table with name person, which will have 3 columns, ID, first name and last name. We also need a new class which is called AppDbContext. Basically it is a subclass of dbContext, so we are going to inherit dbContext and press control dot, it is control plus dot, this symbol. If we hover our mouse here, you will see that this thing, quick fix, control plus dot. So click here and click on using Microsoft.Entity Framework core. So we are going to create a constructor here. So I'm just going to type ctor, press tab, and it will create a constructor for us. So this constructor takes this argument dbContext options, and its type will be this one, and just type here options, and we need to call a base constructor, which means the constructor of the superclass. And for that we need to type here base, and we will pass options to this class, this constructor. Now we need to define a db set person and people. So db set corresponds to the table in the database. If we don't define a db set, it won't create any table in the database, and the name of the table in the database will be people. So you can change it to person, but I would prefer people because it is a recommended practice to pluralize your db sets. To understand the db context and db set, I have created this diagram. So let's look at this. We have this .NET application which have a controller or service. Basically the controller or service are a class. Basically in this controller or service we inject our db context so that we can use the functionality of db context. So our controller or service uses db context, and db context contains multiple db sets like person, db set category and db set product, which are corresponds to the table in the database. So this person.db set corresponds to the person table, this category db set corresponds to this category, and this product belongs to this product. So they are mapped to the databases. So these db sets have some methods like add, update, remove, find. These are basically 4 methods, but it have many methods. I can describe every one of them here. And DbContext also have a save changes method. For example, you want to save data in the person table, so you will tell DbContext. For that, DbContext uses dbset, and dbset uses this add method. When we call the add method, it won't automatically save to the database. It adds this into the context, and context is basically a memory cache where our data resides. When we call save changes, then finally it will execute a insert statement and our data will be saved in the database. Let me show you again. First, let's say we want to save some data in the person table. So we will call this add method, but this add method won't automatically save our data in the database. For that, we need to call the save changes method. So when we call the save changes method, our data will be saved in the database. And when we want to retrieve some data from the database, we will just call the context.person.toList method, and it will load data from the database, and it will hold that data in the context, which is a memory cache, and you can fetch that data from the context. We have created our db sets and db context. One more thing, we need to register this AppDbContext so that we can use it as a dependency injection. For that, we are going to go here, not here, we are going to register here. So registering AppDbContext in the di container, so we can get it instance whenever we need it. Registered as scoped lifetime. So if you don't know anything about the lifetimes, you can check it out on my YouTube channel. You will find the video on transient, scoped, and singleton lifetime. For that, we just need to type here builder.services.add.dbContext, and name of dbcontext is AppDbContext. Okay, and here we need to call option.use SQLite, and here we will define our connection string. So just define here a string, connection string equals to data source equals to Person.db. So we basically do not define our connection string here, but it is just a SQLite which does not contain that much complicated connection string. So that's why I'm just writing connection string here. If I would have been using the SQL Server or Postgres, then I would have defined the connection string here in the app settings.json. Okay, so we have configured our database. Now the next step, we need to seed some data. So what I want to insert some data in people table while creating the database. Okay, for that we have multiple ways. So let's search here. Let's type here database seed in .NET, sorry, entity framework core, seed database in entity framework core, and we are going to visit the official Microsoft site learn.microsoft.com, and here we have this data seeding topic, and we have this way, this new way, use seeding or use seeding async. I guess it is introduced in .NET 9, so it is a very new way of seeding data. You can use either this one or either this one or either this one. So I'm going to use this approach. For that we just have to override a method protected not here, here, protected override on model creating, and here model builder dot entity and name of entity. So model builder dot entity, name of entity is person. Okay, and model builder mb dot property p dot first name is required. Oops, here it should be closed, is required, and has max length 30. So basically we are applying some validation. So we haven't applied any validation in our person class, so I'm going to define it here. Otherwise our first name will be a non-nullable property in the database, and it will take any number of characters, and I don't want that. I just want to limit that to 30 characters, so our first name can only take the 30 characters. Either you can define it here, or you can also define it here like required and max length 30. It's totally up to you, so you can define it anywhere. So I'm not going to define it here for the sake of simplicity, so I'm just going to define it here, and let's copy this guy here too. That's it. Okay, so let's talk about the seeding. So we have to call this method mb dot has data and has data. So we just have to call new person, id equals to 1, first name equals to John, last name equals to Doe, and it should be double quotes. I have bad habit because of JavaScript. Okay, that's fine. Let's copy this guy and paste it here. Let's name it Devrani Ravindra. Okay, so 2 records will be just fine. So what will it do? So when we apply migration to our database, it will add these 2 rows in the person table. Okay, now we have defined our AppDb context. Now how do we persist these changes into the database? How do we even create a database? For that, we have things called migration commands. For migration commands, we need entity framework tools. So just search here entity framework tools. Here, this one, EF core tools reference, and we have this command .NET tool installed global, means it is going to be installed globally in your computer or machine. .NET EF, since I already have installed it, so I am not going to use this command. So make sure you have installed this command, and you can also update this tool via this command. Okay, so I'm just going to install this command .NET tool update global .NET EF. It is saying .NET EF is already installed, so mine is up to date. Okay, then we need to apply some migrations. So just type here .NET migrations, add name of migration. So I'm going to name it initial create. Press enter. .NET EF migrations add initial create. So I am getting this error, unable to create DB context or type AppDbContext. The exception seed entity for entity type person cannot edit because another seed entity with the same key value for ID has already been added. So I get this problem. I know what it is, and I want to update about one thing. I have switched to the dark mode, which I do not prefer, but most of the user prefer dark mode, and I forget to switch light mode to dark mode while recording the tutorial. So pardon me if it has caused you trouble. So I think I should use the dark mode for the rest of the tutorial. Okay, and I am sincerely asking for forgiveness if it caused you any trouble. Okay, so we are getting this error, and I know why this error is occurring, because I had copied this line and this line, and I had forgot to change this to 2. So we cannot insert same value to the ID because this field is a primary key which will be unique, so it won't accept two similar values. Okay, so let's enter it again. To undo this action, use EF migration remove. Okay, so here let's go here, and you can see we have this folder called migrations, and here we have AppDbContext model snapshot.cs. so it is basically the snapshot or database. It's not that much important, so I'm going to close it. And if we click on this file, this timestamp underscore initial create.cs, so we have created this migration file with name initial create, as you can see here, initial create. It shows in the file name too, and it is type of migration. So yeah, now it have two methods, up and down. So when we type database update, this method is going to be called. So when we call database update, this method is going to be called. And what is it doing? Let's see. So first, it is creating a table with name people with columns like ID, type of integer, and it is auto increment column, first name, type text, and max length 30, which we have defined here. Person.cs here, so max length is 30, and last name which is type text, max length 30, and we also have a constraint named pkpeople on the field x.id. It means x.id is our primary key, and here we are inserting some data on the table named people. These are the column names and these are the values which are going to inserted. 1 this, 2 this. So these two rows are also going to be inserted, and here is the down method which will basically drop the table. So let's apply our migration to the database. For that we need to type .NET database update. That's it, and this command will apply the last migration. So we only have one migration, so this is our last and first migration. So it is just basically apply the last migration. Okay, oops, I forgot again. .NET EF database update. So our migration has been applied. As you can see these logs, so first it has created a table name, where is it, migration history underscore ef migration history. So this table is always created when you are using entity framework core. This table basically contains the migration id and the product version, which is a version of entity framework core, which is 9.0 point something in our case, and migration id is the id of the migration file. In our case it will store the migration id of this file name initial create this file. Okay, so if we apply one more migration, it will basically add that migration into the table also. So this table shows the information about migrations, how many migrations we have applied to the databases, to the database. The next table it will create with name people. So here it has executed the command create table people id this first name last name. Then it has inserted these records into the people table. Insert into people this insert into people this. Okay, and here it has also inserted a row in the migration history. So this one is the migration id, basically the name of our migration file, which is defined here. So this one, yeah, this timestamp underscore initial create, and you can see this timestamp underscore initial create, and the version of entity framework core, which is 9.0.6. That's it, and we have successfully applied the migration. We have successfully created a database which you can find here. This one, Person.db, we have created this database. I also forget one thing, which is I need to create a gitignore file. So basically I'm going to step back from here and I'm going to visit to this directory, and here I'm going to create .NET new gitignore, and it will create a new gitignore file. You can check it here, lslah, and here this one gitignore file. The reason I have created gitignore file in the root directory because this gitignore file will be shared by .NET and Angular. So when I create an Angular project, so I will put Angular gitignore content into this file. So there will be a single gitignore file for both Angular and .NET. That is why I have put it in the root directory. Okay, since I have created a gitignore, I also need to initialize it as a git init. Let's add git add git commit and type here first commit. Okay, the next step will be git push origin master, but since I haven't configured it with the remote repository, so it is not going to work. Okay, so let's visit to the previous directory. Okay, now we are inside the person.CRUD.api. So now we have created our database and we have inserted some data there. So I don't need this file. Now let's create some endpoints. So we have two ways to create endpoint. One is controller based APIs, another one is minimal APIs. To work with controller based APIs, you need to configure this project as a controller based project. So you just have to type here builder dot services dot add controllers, and just have to type here app.map controllers, and that's it. It is our controller based project. Then you have to create a new controller. So this is a traditional controller based APIs. I'm not going to use this approach, so I'm just going to remove these two lines. Okay, so I'm just going to create the minimal APIs, which is much simpler and it is perfect fit for this small project. So just going to type here app.map, and let's create our sample APIs. Let's type here API slash people. Oops, it should be map get. Okay, and here just do this. Okay, and we have these extra brackets which we do not need. Now we are fine, and I just can return hello. That will be fine. Okay, so we have created a simple API here. So how do we call it? So first of all, we need to run our project .net run. Meanwhile it is running, I want to show you something. You need to install an extension called REST client. What it is? REST client, REST space client by Hua Chow Mao. Pardon me if I am pronouncing it wrong. So you need to install this package. This extension is needed to work with HTTP files. So I'm going to create an HTTP file here. So basically this file is needed for testing our APIs. You can use Postman if you already know about Postman and you don't want to use this thing. You can also use Postman instead of this to test your APIs, but I'm going to use this approach, which I find much simpler than Postman. So I'm going to create a new file here, a custom file without template. So I'm going to name it person.htp. So here I'm going to type base address, and here should be our @ and base address equals to address of our application URL. So just copy this line and paste this line here, API/people. This is our base address. To call the get endpoint, we just type here get base address, that's it, and send. Click on this button. Oops, here remove these quotes and this thing also, and let's make a space here, send request, and you will see we have 200 status code, which is okay. it means it is success. And here we have this hello world, sorry, just hello, and we have defined this thing here. So we have created our simple APIs. But if we create multiple APIs here, this file is going to be a little messier. So we are going to create a new folder for that. Let's create a new folder. Let's name it endpoints. And in that folder, where is it? Yeah, this one. We're going to create a new class, and let's name it Person.Endpoints. Okay, so here in the Person.Endpoints, let's remove this line. Okay, let's make it a static class because we are going to use a static method here. Public static void, and this is an extension method, that is why it should be static. And let's name it map person endpoints this web application app, and we can just copy where it is, this line here. Okay, and we can just call here app.map person endpoints, and it should have included this line here. Okay, now let's see. So let's rerun this application. Let's execute this endpoint, and you will see that everything is working. So let's close program.cs file. We do not need it for now. So let's refactor this thing. Let's get actual people data from the database. So first thing, we need to inject AppDbContext here. Okay, that's fine. Let's type try catch block here, try and catch exception ex. Okay, and here we will return status code, not status code, results dot status code, or we can just return internal server error. So it will basically return 500 internal server error status code and plus some error message, which we will pass here ex dot message. Okay, so in the try block, we will try to find people equals to await context dot people dot toList async. And since it is await, so we have to define here async, and it is async method, so we need to call toList async. So you can see how we are retrieving data from the database. First we are using context, which is db context, then dot people, which is db set, and then toList async, which is basically retrieving all the data from the database. So it is our context, it is our db sets, which we have defined here. db context, you can see we have defined our FTP context, and we have defined our db set here. Here we are using this db set and context, and basically it is retrieving all rows and columns from the database. Yeah, kind of select asterisk from people. So it will basically execute this query, or just like this one, select id, first name, last name. It will execute exactly this query. It is retrieving all the columns from this table, and here we will return results dot OK. So results dot OK returns 200 OK status code, but we need to pass some data. So to pass some data, we just need to copy it here and paste it here. Sorry, we just need to copy this and paste it here. So it will return 200 status code with some data which we are passing here. So let's run our application again and let's execute this endpoint, and you can see we are getting some data and we are getting this status code 200. Okay, so if we had any error, so we would have a 500 internal server error code here instead of 200. Okay, and instead of this JSON we would have that error message. Okay, so that is our get all endpoint. We need one more endpoint, so let's make this one. I just had copied it and it will be a get one. So basically we will type here id, which will be a type of int, and this id should be present here, int id. Okay, and here this method will also have a name with name get person by id, and I will show you later why we are using this with name here. First we need to find a person from the database. Context.people.find async, and it will take a parameter which is a primary key. So I'm going to type here my primary key, which is id. Okay, and person, that is fine. Let's remove this line, and here I'm going to pass person. But what if this record does not exist? Then it will return null, and I do not want that. I don't want to return null. I want to handle this condition when person does not exist. Maybe someone has passed a wrong id and that person does not exist in the database. So we will just check if person equals to null, or we can simplify it with this person is null, which is a newer syntax. So if person is null, then return not found. Sorry, it should be results dot not found. So either you can just return not found or you can return some message. So not found is okay. Okay, so we have created our this endpoint also. So before that, let me show you something. When we have executed this endpoint, so it has executed this command, this SQL statement: select p.id, p.firstname, p.lastname from people. Let's run it again, .NET run, and here where is our person.http file? We need to create one more endpoint here. So let's type here 1, and you have been noticing that there is no button or link like this send request. And why is that? Because we haven't put 3 hashes here. Now when we put 3 hashes, it will treat this one as a new request. Let's click on this guy, and you can see we have 200 okay, and this record. If I type here 2, then you will see 2, this one. If I type here 3, or 23, whatever it is, then you will see that 404 not found. So this is working like a charm. We are good so far, and it has translated it to this SQL statement: select this from people where p.id equals to this and limit 1. So now we need to create a post endpoint. So I'm basically going to copy all of this stuff and paste it here. Okay, and I'm going to name it map post, and since it is a post, so it will need something from the body. So that thing will be person. Let's remove this line and this line also. First thing we are going to do, we are going to add some data, we are going to add person to the database. So just type here, no, wait, context dot people dot add person and context dot save changes async, and since it is async method, we need to type here await. That's it. So it will add this record to the database, and at the end we need to return either we can return OK with this object results.ok, but it is not a good thing because we have created a resource. So we need to return some explicit method that indicates we have created a resource. So we need to return this 201 created status code plus location of the resource plus created data. So we need to return these things. For that we have a method called created@root, and here we need to define a root, then root parameters, then a value, a object. So it will return a newly created object which is person. And how do we get that root? So we get that root from here with name. So just copy this guy and paste it here, and this root needs this id parameter. So we are going to define it, where is it, here, id equals to person.id. so it is our map post. So let's run this application .net run, and meanwhile let's create a post request here. So just copy this thing and paste it here. Just type here post, remove this guy. It also takes content type. We need to define which type of data it is expecting. So it is expecting application JSON, and we also need to pass a body with these two columns. First name will be Jack, last name equals to Sparrow. Okay, so our application is running. Let's execute this endpoint. You can see 201 created. This is the location. This API/people/3. So you can find this resource at this location. Let's click on this, and here it is. And the created object, which is id3 person name last name. So basically it has, basically we have written this object which we are receiving from the client. We are returning it to the person, and this object does not contain id. Here it has id field, but it does not contain id because we are not passing it from here, so its id will be 0. But when we have right here, we have written save changes, then it will automatically add that id to this object. So that thing is handled by entity framework core. Okay, so that is our post endpoint. Now we need to create a put endpoint. So put endpoint is basically an update endpoint, map put. Okay, and it also need id, which will be integer type, and we also need to pass this id int id. Okay, and everything will be same. So here we will check few conditions. First, if id that is passed as a query parameter does not equals to the id which is passed in the body, which is person.id, then we will return bad request and id mismatch, and here we'll just write result dot bad request. Next thing is, what if a record does not exist which we are going to update? So for that we need to check if await context dot people dot any async p dot id equals to id, and if this record does not exist, then we will return not found. Basically it's results dot not found. Okay, then we will update record and save changes. Instead of returning this, we will just return results dot no content. It will return just 204 no content, and it is a perfect for update APIs or put APIs. So this is our put endpoint, and let's create a delete endpoint also. So here just type map delete and this thing, and we do not need any body, so I'm going to remove this guy. Okay, so we also need this condition, don't need this condition, and we need to check this condition but not in this way. So we are going to find the person record first, where person equals to await context dot people dot find async id. Okay, and here person, if person is null, then we will say not found, otherwise we are going to remove that person. Okay, so we need this object here, that's why we have first retrieve this object. We will type save changes async and return no content. Okay, so let's execute our application again. So .net run. Meanwhile, let's create our endpoints here. Here let's change it to put, and let's type here not null Jack Smith. Its id is 3. Well, let's type here 3, and we should pass id here, let's just say 31. So if I click here, you will see 400 bad request, and okay, it is actually a bad request. Okay, now you can see 400 bad request, and it is saying id mismatch because this id and this id does not match. So let's match them, and let's make a put request, You can see 4204 no content, and it hasn't written any content, so it means we are success. Let's check it here. 3, and you can see with 3 we have first name. Okay, first name was null, Jack Smith. So we are fine. 3 Jack Smith. So let's try to execute these APIs from the browser. Let's say example.com, and let's inspect console, and let's type here fetch and the URL, which is, where is it? Here is it. Okay, here it is. So copy it here, API people, then response.json, then response console.log data. Let's name it data. So you can see we have this error. Access to fetch this has been blocked by CORS policy. So what is CORS? So it is cross origin resource sharing. So right now our APIs are listening at localhost 5152, and we are making requests from example.com. So example.com and this thing are not in the same origin. That is why we cannot make that request. So browser usually have the same origin policy, means your front end and back end application should be on the same origin. If it is not, it will block that request. So you have to give access in the back end for the CORS request or cross origin request. So we need to give that permission here. So open program.cs file, and let's type here course in .NET Core. Let's click here, and you will see we have these lines. So just copy this guy here and paste it here, and this line, and we should enter this line here, and here with origin. So which origin you want to allow? So if you type here asterisk, it means asterisk will be allowed, means every origin is allowed. You definitely don't want to allow every origin, so type the origin of your application. Right now I am just going to type here this origin name, or I can allow every origin. So let's allow every origin, and we need to configure few more things like with headers. So maybe you have some extra headers like xpagination. So if you haven't configured it here, so that header is not going to be passed with that request. So either you can configure it like it, or you can just type here allow any header. And one more thing with methods. So by default get method is allowed, but if you make post or get delete request, that is going to be blocked for cross origin request. So you don't want that, so that is why we are going to allow every method. So just type here any method, that's it. Let's press enter here, let's press enter here and let's put a semicolon here, and we also need to call this endpoint, so just call it here above these endpoints. Okay, so let's run our application again. Let's make that fetch request again, and you will see we have now our data. You can see. Okay, now I'm just going to type here localhost 4200. That will be a URL of our Angular application, and I'm going to pass it here, so only this origin will be allowed. So behind the camera I did one thing. I had a gitignore file inside this Person.CRUD folder. I have moved that gitignore file here, and I also had that .git folder which was hidden folder here, so I had deleted it from here, and then I had created a new git file here. So basically I did edit type a command git init, press enter, and it will initialize a git repository here. So I need a git repository here in the root directory so that I can manage both my front end and back end project. I accidentally has created it here. Now I have moved it here. Okay, and one more thing, I have noticed that this person.db, it should be person and dot small db, not capital db. However, it is not making any problem, but it should be small db, so I am going to delete the whole database. Okay, and here in the program.cs file I'm going to change it to small d. Okay, so we are going to run the migration command again. So let's visit to the cd person.crud and person.crud.api, and let's type .NET EF database update, and it will create a new database for us. Oops, it is saying use .NET build to see errors, so I guess we have some errors. .NET build. Okay, so basically I was getting the error because my project was running. I hope it is the error. So let's run that command again. .NET EF database update. Okay, build succeeded and we are done, and we can see we have this person.db database. Okay, so let's run our project. .NET run. Okay, so let's hit this request. So this is fine, this one is also fine. Let's make a post request Jack Sparrow, that is fine, and let's upgrade it also. Before updating, let's type here null. Let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see we have this error when I am passing this null, because database does not allow null in the column first name and null last name, because we have made those columns non-nullable. You can see the error here, not null constraint failed people first name. So basically it is checking validation on the database label, but it should not happen. Validation should always be checked at the application level, so it should have written validation error before going to the database. And why was not happening? Let's go here to our endpoints, and in our post endpoint here, this one, it is our model, and let's see we have defined our validation or not. So our validation has defined in our model, so why is it not working? Because in the minimal APIs we don't have any built-in mechanism for validation in the .NET, but it is going to be coming soon from the .NET 10. So we are using .NET 9, so we don't have any built-in mechanism. So we will use some external library for that, and that library is Fluent validation. Since this validation is not working on client side, so we do not need it here, but we need this validation for the database. So go here, AppDbContext, we can define that validation here also. So let's define it here. Is required has max length 30, so that's good. And now let's create a new migration file, .NET migrations add, oops, I forget EF again, .NET migrations add validation logic moved. Yeah, again that error, and that is because I am running the project, so I need to stop this project first. Let's copy this guy and let's do it here. Okay, we are fine. Okay, so it must have created a new migration file here. Where is it? This one. And in this migration file you can see there is no changes in the up and down. It means it make no difference if we write it here or write it in the person class here, so it won't make any difference in the database label. So you can either write it here or write it there. So I'm going to write it here, and I want to make my person class green. And since this migration file is just empty, so it is not needed, so I'm just going to write this command .NET ef migration remove, and it should remove the last migration file which we have created. Okay, so here now it is gone. Okay, let's see our project is working or not. Let's confirm it before moving ahead. So let's make this request. Okay, so we are fine, and that's good. Okay, now let's stop this guy and let's move to the validation part. Let's close this thing. Okay, so we need a library called Fluent validation. You don't need to remember any code, you can just look for the documentation, just I am doing right now. No one remember the code unless he is doing it for a regular basis. Okay, so here go to the installation. It will say you can install it like this and this. So we are using .NET CLI, so we are going to use this one, .NET add package Fluent validation. Okay, so we are done here, and now we need to create a class. Oh sorry, before that we need to create a folder, validators. Inside this validator folder we are going to create a new class named, let's name it person validator, and let's remove this thing. Okay, and this person validator will inherit the abstract validator person. Okay, and here we will define a constructor. We'll write here rule 4 and p dot first name dot not empty, and not empty will handle the empty string and the null, so it will handle both. Let's write it like this and this, and here we can type with message first name can not be empty. Okay, and let's write one more rule, which is maximum length of 30, and with message first name cannot exceed 30 characters. Okay, so this is a rule for first name. We are going to write another rule, and that's for last name. That's fine. Let's paste it here. Let's paste it here. Oh, we are good. So we have written our validation rules. You don't need to remember it. You can all find it here. Let's go here in this section, ASP.NET Core, and you can see here is class and here is our validator. Okay, now how to configure this validator? So we need to register it as a scoped. So it is one way. We have multiple way to do this. First one is manual validation, then automatic validation, then the automatic validation using a filter. So we are going to go with the first one, the manual validation. So for that you just need to copy this line here and program.cs. We can paste that line here, or we can manually type it. So I'm going to write here builder dot services dot add scoped. Okay, and here I validator person and person validator. Okay, so we have registered it in the di container. Okay, that's fine. Now here in the person endpoint, we need to inject it here. I validator person validator, and let's press control dot using Fluent validation. That's fine. And here you can go down in the minimal API section. You can see we can use it like this. Let's copy this line and let's paste it here. Okay, so validation result, that's it. Validation result equals to validator, not validator, we have person validator dot validate. Oh, why I'm getting error? I think I have used the wrong validation result. Where is it? Yeah, I have used the wrong one. I must have used the Fluent validation one, using Fluent validation dot results. Okay, or we can just use var here, that will also be fine. Okay, and same thing we can copy in the put endpoint. Oh, where is it? Yeah, here, and we can type here I validator person and person validator. That's good. So let's run our project. Now let's run this endpoint and let's see. Okay, it's saying 400 bad request, one or more validation error occurs, so first name cannot be empty. And if I write here, it will also throw the same error, first name cannot be empty. Okay, so let's see. That's good. Last name cannot be empty, so we are good so far. And we can also check it here. Okay, so let's name it Jack Smith. ID mismatch. Okay, so it should be 3. And we can go here and check. Third one is Jack Smith. Well, let's remove the third third record. So let's go here and let's change it to delete, and we are good. Let's see. Yeah, so we have deleted. We can check it here. We don't have the third record. We can also check that thing here. Okay, so we are done with our endpoints. Now we are going to create a front-end application. So I'm going to close this guy and I'm going to open new git bash terminal, and here I'm going to visit that directory, and here add this character. It means in the home directory. Inside the home directory we have documents, blah blah blah, and we can go here. You can see. Okay, now in this directory we are going to create a new Angular project. So type here ng new name of project. Let's name it just client. That's good. And let's make it minimal. Minimal means it won't include any spec.ts files, and it won't include any additional HTML and CSS file. It will do everything HTML, CSS and TypeScript in a single file, in a single component file. And it is not a recommended way for production, so it is a demo application. So I'm going to use minimal. In production application, make sure you don't want to use minimal, because maybe you want some tests, maybe you want your file in a structured way, you want a separate file for HTML, you want separate file for CSS and separate file for your TypeScript, but I don't want that, so I am using the minimal. And styles equals to SCSS. You can choose CSS, CSS, no matter. Anyway, we are not going to even write any CSS code in this application. Let's press enter, and it will ask us few questions. It's style, so it will ask us few questions like, yeah, would you like to share the data? No. Okay. It is asking, do you want zone.js, which is a developer preview, or not? No, I don't want that. Okay, it is saying server side rendering or server side generation. No, I don't want that. Okay, so it is creating a project for us. Okay, so our project has been created. You can see we have this client application. In the current application, we have this gitignore file, which we do not need. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to open it in Notepad, and I'm going to copy all of its content, and I'm going to paste its content here in the this gitignore file, which is a gitignore file of .NET. So I'm going to create a single gitignore file for both .NET and Angular application. I'm just going to type here for Angular, and let's paste it. Okay, so now not here we don't need this gitignore file, so I'm going to delete this guy. So we are good so far. Then we can visit to a client folder, cd client. Okay, and we can open it here, code dot. So our application is opened in the VS Code. That's fine. And here you can see we have lots of file here, so let's go through them briefly. Over here we have tsconfig.json file. So basically it is a TypeScript related configuration, not that important. And this one it is similar. So here, and this one is readme.md, and we do not need it because we are going to create that readme.md in the root directory. Okay, now we have the file called package.json, and it is an important file. Here you can see we have our script, means how to run our project, build or watch. And here we have dependencies or libraries that are installed in this project, like it has installed these packages, and this one rxjs, tslib, zone.js, and all of these dev dependencies which are not going to be included in the production build. So these dependencies will only work on the developer environment. And here we have this one package lock.json. So these are the dependencies of the dependencies or that kind of thing. Okay, now here we have angular.json, and here we have defined the settings related our Angular application. So you can see here we have typed style equal to scss, which we have defined during creation of project, and we also have defined skip test equals to false. It means we are not going to create test because we have chosen a template like minimal. So it is definitely going to skip tests, and it will also skip the creation of separate HTML and CSS files. So here we can see we have a bunch of other things. Here we have defined our styles and a lot of other stuff. So that's it. And here in the public folder we define our images like favicons, and here is a main folder called src, and these are node modules. So these are basically dependencies which have been installed for these projects. And here the src file, inside the src file we have the folder app, and inside the app we have app config, app routes, app ts, index.html, main ts, and styles.css. style.css is a global style sheet, so whatever you define here will be applied globally in your project. And main.ts file, let's go here in the index.html file. So it is the root file which is going to be executed. It is the first file called index.html, and here you can see we have app root here, and this app root is defined here, this one. So this component is going to be called here. So when we run our application, this file will be called index.html. Inside this file, this component is going to be called, which is this one app root. So this component is going to be called. And here we have main.ts file, so it is basically bootstrap the application. Okay, and here we define our configuration, and here we define our routes. Okay, now let's move ahead and let's see how we can run our application. To run our application, we just need to type here ng serve dash open, and it will open our application. But we have opened external terminal, so we are going to run it from here, npm, sorry, not npm, ng serve dash open. So it oops, this command is not available. But okay, so we are not inside the Angular project, so let's go to the Angular project cd client, ng serve open. You can see it is saying welcome to client. And where is it defined? As I have said, index.html calls this element, which is our app component, and here we have our app component, which is going to be called first, and this app component says welcome to title. So let's type here hello YouTube, and let's see. Okay, so it's saying hello YouTube, and let's remove this guy. That's it. Let's remove this guy too, and we are going to add a bootstrap here. For that we need to type npm install bootstrap, and it is installed. You can find it here in the node modules, and here. So here it is, bootstrap dist css, and we have this bootstrap.min.css. so how can we include it? Either we can include it angular.json, or we can include in styles.scss. so we are going to include it here in the styles section. So let's find styles, yeah, here. So let's type here comma, just right click here, copy and paste it, and you can see it has copied the whole path. Let's restart the project so that we won't have any problem on reloading it. So ng-serve open, and meanwhile let's open the bootstrap 5. okay, and let's go here and let's find the nav component. Let's type here nav bar. Okay, so we are going to use a simple nav bar like okay, so let's copy this one. Let's copy this guy and let's move to the app.ts file. Either we can paste it here, you can see it is working, or we can create a separate file for that. So let's create a separate file for that. Let's create ng generate component, or you can shorten it nggc, folder name shared, and the component name will be layout.component, and flat means it is not going to create a folder for this, so it will be just reside inside the shared folder. And we can also type change detection equals to on push. So basically it is a change detection strategy. It's a whole different topic which is out of the scope of this tutorial. So go to search about the on push if you want to know about it. Honestly, I think you must know about this, so you must search it in the internet. Okay, so let's go here, let's ring this thing. Okay, and now you can see we have shared folder layout.component, and you can see here change detection equals to change detection strategy on push. Okay, now we can just remove this thing and paste our navigation bar here. So it has a lot of things which we do not need, so let's remove this thing. Okay, and let's make it person app. Okay, so it is our component where we have defined our navigation bar. So basically it is our layout component, and we are going to call it here app layout. So how do I know it is app layout? Because of this selector app layout dot component, but let's remove the component from here. I just need app layout. Okay, now we are fine, and we do not need this router outlet here. Okay, so that's it. Let's copy this guy and paste it here. Let's define it below the nav. Let's create a new div, and let's say class equals to margin, let's say 4 from all side, and let's import router outlet here. Router outlet is not a known element. Okay, so why it is not a known element? Router outlet is a known, not known element. Whatever. ng-serve open. Okay, so we are absolutely fine. You can see we have multiple links here. We also don't need those links, so let's trim them down. We just need a single link called people, and that's it. People. Okay, so in this section we will define our content page. Okay, so this is our layout page and our content page will be displayed here. So let's create some components. So let's open this thing and let's try, let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so let's add few components. So first one is ngGC shared. Inside this shared, not inside this shared, let's define it in the root. Okay, so we need a component called not found. Okay, not found dot component flat change direction equals to on push. We need a component inside the person folder and let's name it person.component. Okay, okay, so let's zoom it out. Okay, now you can see we have this not found component, and let's remove this thing from here. Do the same thing here in the person. Let's remove this guy. Okay, now what to do? Okay, now we need to define our routes. So just go here, app.routes, and here we will define our routing. So first one will be let's just say it have these things. So first one will be path, and our path will be people, component will be person component, next path will be this one. If person visits to this path or this path, then he will redirect to the person component or to this path. So when user don't enter any path, it will redirect to this path. So we will write here redirect to people. Okay, and path match equals to full. And now we will define the wildcard. So path equals to this, component equals to not found component. So if user enter a path which does not exist in the route table or route file, it will return it to the not found component. Okay, so we have defined our paths. So let's go here in the layout component and let's type here router module. Okay, and here just remove this href and type here router link equals to this. Okay, and oops, not this one, this one. Router link equals to people. So let's go here. Home and people both have the same path, and let's create one more component. Let's name it, sorry, not from here, ngGC. Let's name it about. So it is created here inside the person, so I'm going to move it from here to the app directory. Okay, so it is now inside the app directory. Oops, I have moved the wrong one. Let's move it back, and let's move this about component. Okay, so I am getting some error because I have made a mess, so that's fine now. This one, about component. This one, let's remove this thing and let's type here coming soon. Let's go here in the route table and let's define one more route. So here either we can directly load it or we can use the lazy loading. So instead of loading it instantly, we will load whenever it is needed. So here we will just type load component and import about component dot then a dot about component. You can do the same thing here. Let's copy this guy and let's change it to not found component. So instead of loading them all at once, we will load them whenever they are needed. So when we visit to this route, this component will be loaded. When we visit to this route, then this component will be loaded. And at the application startup, only this component will be loaded. So let's go here and let's define it also about. And let's remove this active thing from here and just type here active router link active equals to active and copy this thing and paste this thing here also. So as you can see, the active link is working right now. About is a little bit darker. Now people is a little bit darker because home and people have the same link, so that's why. Let's remove the home thing. We do not need it, so we only have two links here. Okay, and here in the nav brand, let's type router link this thing. So when we click on this thing, we will visit to the our people file. Okay, we are good so far. So let's define something in the person component, and you have been noticing that there was a person file which I have created off camera. So you can just get it from my repository in the root directory. So just go there and just copy it from here. I don't want to waste time on the HTML, so I just have created it off camera. Otherwise this tutorial will be much longer. So let's type here person component, and in the person components let's paste this thing. It's nothing so special. We have a form and it is an inline form. I have defined the bootstrap properties mb3 margin bottom 3 d inline flex means it is a inline flex component, and gap 2 means it will create a gap of some pixels between this and this and this. Now we have this div called list, and inside this we have defined our table with these three headers and a single row, and this one have two buttons edit and delete, and they are inside this div which are also inline flex. So they will define in a single row and there will be a gap between them. So let's go here and you can see we have our design ready. Now we will work on the functionality part. So now first of all we need our environment file where we can define our some secrets. So ng means generate environments. You can see ngg environments name, that's it. and it will create the environment files for us. So they are just a file containing objects. So yeah, ngg collection and schematic is, and okay, typo environments. Okay, so it has created this file, and this file you can see it here in the environments folder, environment.development.ts, environment.ts. So this will take precedence over the dev environment, and this one will take precedence in the production environment. So we will define this thing here and our API URL. So we will define our API URL here, which is basically is here where our APIs are running. So this one, just copy this thing here and paste it, and we will also append API. That's it. So we are done here, and now inside this folder we are going to create a bunch of files. First one is ngg interface. Name of interface will be person.model. Oops, it must be defined here. So I have defined it inside the app. It must be defined inside the person, so I'm going to move it here. Okay, now we are going to define ng generate service, or nggs in short form, and person.service.ts. you can see here. Press enter. Okay, so these two files have been created. Oops. Okay, person service and person model. So person model will be model of our backend class named person. So it will have three properties: id, which will be type of number, first name is string, last name is string. Okay, so we are done. Okay, let's open the person.service and let's remove this thing. I have messed up with names. I shouldn't have written .ts there, so it has appended extra ts. Sorry for that. Okay, now we are good. So you can see here injectable decorator. Injectable decorator means we can inject this service in our components, and provided in root means this service will be available for all the components. Means it will just created once and shared across all the components till the application lifetime. Okay, let's remove this constructor from here. Now first thing we going to need is private read only http equals to inject http client. So this class is needed for calling the APIs, but we also need to register here in the app.config.ts. so just type here provide http client, otherwise you will get error and it will have the parentheses. Okay, so we are good so far. Next thing we need is private URL of our APIs, and will be environment. So make sure it is environment.development plus people. So basically it will be localhost 5152 API/people. Now we will create our methods. So first one will be get people. We will get all the people. So return this dot http dot get and person model and this dot http, sorry, this dot URL That's it, and it will return an observable of person array. Okay, next one will be a single person, which will be retrieved by id, int id, sorry, not int id number, and it will be this. So we are typing here backtick and this one and id. So we will return just person model, so it will return the observable of person model. Now we will type here the post endpoint or the post method. So let's name it add person, and it will return just the person, this dot url, and it will also accept a object which we will get from here, person of type person model, and it should be post. Okay, now we need to define a put endpoint. Update person, and it should be this url. Okay, so here we must have a dollar sign and a dollar sign here. It would come from person.id. Okay, now it should be put, not post. This .http.put, and it won't return anything, so I'm going to type here void, because our put endpoint just returned 204, no content. This url person.id, that's it. Last one will be this one, delete person, and it will just take this parameter, it will be delete, and it will just be id, and it won't need anything, so it will just return observable of void. That's it. So we have defined our person service. So now we will create a person store. So I'm just going to type here, I'm just going to create a new file here, person.store.ts, and we will create a local state in this file. So it will be export class person store, and you can just type here injectable, and I'm not going to type provided in root here because I don't need it everywhere. I just need it in a single component. Now we need to define a state. So export interface, name of interface will be person is state, and state will be people. Read only person model. Next thing will be loading boolean, and last thing will be error, http error response or null. So error will be type of http response or null, it can accept both values. Let's type here export, not just export, const initial state of type person state. We are just defining initial state for person, so people will be an empty array, loading will be false, and error is null. So we will do state management in this file, and we are going to use signals for that. You can also use behavior subject instead of the signal, but I'm going to use signal for their simplicity. So let's type here private read only, and we are going to inject person service here. So let's type here person service, or we can remove the underscore, equals to inject person service. That's it. And we are also going to define our state here. So private state equals to this, sorry, not this, equals to signal and some initial value, initial state. Okay, so here is a typo, state, initial state. Okay, so you can see here is a writable signal, person, state. That's it. And now we will define, or we will get some computed signals. Basically we are getting the slices of this state. We need 3 slices. First one is people, then loading, and last one is error. So first one, let's get people equals to computed. Okay, and here the method goes this dot state dot people and loading and error. So just copy this thing here and copy this thing here. So we don't directly share state to the components because we don't want that a person from component can directly mess with the state. So instead of that, we provide them some computed signals and we provide some methods to manipulate this state. So here, first thing, let's type here a constructor, and inside this constructor we will call this method. So this will be private method get people, or let's say load people. So how do we load people? So first of all, let's define a private method here. Private it will be set loading, private set loading, and this dot state dot update, and it is a method, and here we write this dot state comma loading equals to true. That's it. And here we will define another private method, private set error, and error, which will be a type of HTTP error response, and this dot state dot update, and it will get a method here. This dot state loading will be false and error will be this one. So why we are getting error? See, error HTTP error response and HTTP error response, error. Oops, here is it. Now we are fine. Now we are good. So let's not call it. Here we haven't loaded data from the database. So first we will retrieve data from the database, then we will push that data in this people array. This dot person service dot get people, and get people returns an observable, so we have to subscribe it. So here next, and it will be the next method. Then here we will define error, and it will be our error method, will be our next method. And here we will receive the list of people Okay, and one more thing, here just type private and read only destroy ref equals to inject destroy ref, or we can just make it more shorter, but destroy ref is fine. It is a meaningful name. Okay, now why do we need this? Because since it is observable, we have to subscribe it, and we also make sure that it gets destroyed perfectly. So for that I'm going to type here pipe, and we have an operator called take until destroyed, and here we will pass this dot destroy ref. Okay, so we have next, and this, but before we just have to set loading here. Now here we need to update this date, so yeah, so we can just type this dot state dot update, and this dot state state is a method. Okay, and here that's fine. So this dot state and loading will be false, and we will append people here, and in the error we will just write here console dot log error, and this dot set error. Oh, I have messed up, so it should not be here. Okay, it should be here. Now we are good. And we will call this method here load people. So when this person store is instantiated, people will be loaded from the database and stored in this store. Now we need to inject it here, so private read only person store equals to inject person store. That's it. And here we will retrieve few things, like let's just say first, let's just retrieve these people first. People equals to this dot person store dot people, and if we hover our mouse here, you will see it is a signal of type read only person model array. If I put a parenthesis here, then you will say it is not a signal anymore. We have extracted its value, and now it's a read only person model array. So let's do few things here, and first we are going to check a condition here. If people is null, or people dot length is less than equals to less than 1, then we will return. Okay, why I'm getting error people dot length? So why it is saying people is never, say if people, okay, now we are fine. If people is null, it means we don't have any people data, or people length is less than 1, then we will just write here h5 no data found, else we will display this table. Okay, now inside the table here we are going to apply a for loop. So here for let person of people track person.id. So why I'm getting error? So let's see. For in Angular, item of items. Okay, so we don't have let here. Okay, we are fine now. And here we will display person dot first name, person dot last name, and here let's remove these things. Let's remove this thing and just type here click, and we will define this method later. Same thing here, click, and we will define this method later. Okay, so let's see what happens. So if we go here, you will see we don't have anything here, and you will see that this error. So basically this error is saying that, let me show you. So here we haven't defined here provided in root. If I have done that, so that error won't be happening, but I don't want to provide it at root. I just want that this person store is only accessible in this person component. So for that we need to define it here in the providers array, and let's type here person store, and we are fine, but we still don't have any data here. So why is that? It's saying that http localhost 42 object.people. So let's see what is happening here. Let's go here and let's go to the person service, and let's see. It's people URL. Let's see what is our URL. console.log this .url, and let's just type here my URL. Let's see. So it is saying my URL is this. Oh, so json.stringify. So why my URL is like this? Okay, I get it. Environment.api URL. So now my URL is this. So we are fine. We don't have any error. We don't have any error, but we also don't have any data here. Why is that? Because here in the person component we have retrieved the value of signal here, and it does not work like that, so we have to make it signal first. Okay, now our people is signal, so we have to do some changes here. So first put parentheses here. Okay, now here put it here, and let's go here, and you can see we have our data now. And so let's get other slices like loading and error, and let's handle these things also. So we will handle these things here. Here. So first let's type here h3 at update person, and here we will check if loading, then we will just write here loading, and you can also use a nice spinner here, but I'm not going to use it. Now we will check if error, then p.text danger, we don't need to define it. Okay, text danger, and let's type here something went wrong. Okay, so we have handled the loading and error situation. So let's go here, and you won't see anything right now. So let's close this application, let's rerun it, and you will see we have loading, but we still, okay, now we have something went wrong. Okay, so let's rerun this application again. Now we also need to add few more methods like add, update, delete. So let's do that, but those methods will not be private, those will be public methods. So first one will be add person, which will take person object as a parameter, person model, and here we will write this dot person service dot add person, person dot pipe, and take until destroyed, this dot destroy ref, and subscribe. Inside the subscribe we have next, then we have our error. So let's copy the error thing from here. Okay, and let's just replace it here. We are good, and this will receive a person object, person model, and just type here this dot state dot update, and not this dot people comma loading false. And why I'm getting error? Oh, maybe I was missing something. So let's do it from start, and here we will have this dot state. Okay, now we are good, loading false, and people, here it will be an array, this dot people and person. So here we will add this person, which we are getting from here, not from here, sorry, which we are getting from the subscribe next method. So we are getting this person when we create a person successfully in the database, then we receive this person as a response, then we are adding this person into a state. So basically we are appending it in our array. Since our array is read only, so we cannot push anything to it, rather than we will just do this thing in this way. Okay, so we have done this add person, so let's do same, let's make it update person, person, and it will be update person, take until destroyed. Okay, let's put it in the next line, and let's put it in the next line, do the same here. Okay, so update method does not return anything, it just return 204 empty status code. Okay, so here instead of doing this, we have to do something else, because we have to update a state. Okay, so let's remove this thing, and instead of this, type state dot, sorry, not state, people dot map, and p where is it, p dot id equals to person, which we are receiving from the parameter dot id. Then we will get person, otherwise we will get p. In this way we can update our array. So let's paste this method here, and instead of update person, we will write here delete person, and here it will take id number. That's it. And instead of update person, just write here delete person, it will take id. Now we need to remove this condition from here. Let's see. It's too much complicated. There are lots of parentheses. I'm not sure which one to remove. I think here is it. So yeah, this one, this dot people dot filter p dot id doesn't equals to id. Okay, so we are done with our store. Let's move to the component, and now here we will work on this form. So first of all, we need to create a form. To create a form, we need to import a module named Reactive Forms module. That's it. And here we will define our forms. So right here, not private, it is just, yeah, we need to define it private. Read only fb equals to inject form builder. That's it. Now person form equals to this dot fb dot group, and here we will define few properties like id, and its initial value will be 0, and sorry, not initial, default value will be 0, and first name, its default value will be empty string, and we'll define a validators here, validators dot required, and sorry, replace first with last. So our form object has been created, and let's define a method here, reset form this dot person form dot reset. That's it. And let's define a form here on, sorry, let's define a method on submit, and here we will just log the value of form this dot person form dot value. So instead of doing this, let's put it inside a const person equals to this as person model. Now it is a type of person model. That's good. Let's log its value. Okay, so we have defined our form here, so let's do the same thing here. So here inside these big brackets, type form group and define the name of form, so which is person form ng submit on submit. Okay, that's it, and let's see what happens here. A, B, you can see first name, last name, everything is 0 because, yeah, I get it. I haven't defined a thing called form control name here. Form control name equals to, say, first name. Let's copy this thing and paste this thing here and change it to last name. We also need to define a hidden field here. It is not required for adding the person, but it is required for updating the person. So input colon hidden will create a hidden field and it will be ID. Okay, so let's see what happens. A, B, and A, B, and ID is 0. We are good so far. So let's reset this, but it is not working. Oh, where is our reset button? Here it is. Let's make it button primary and click on reset. Does this method not exist on reset? Yeah, it was reset form. Now we are good. So if I type here A, B and click on reset, that's fine. If I click on save, you can see we are still saving the form, but instead of that, it should have displayed some validation error, and this button should not be visible until we have our form validated. So we need to define some validation. For that, I'm going to define a getter here. So if you don't know what is getter setter in JavaScript, go check out in the Google. These are some basics of JavaScript, nothing fancy things. Get f, it's just a short name because, yeah, long names are pain in the UI. So it will just return this dot person form dot controls. That's it. And here, where is it? Button. So this button will only be visible when our form is valid. Person form disabled equals to person form dot invalid. If this form is invalid, then this button will be invalid. You can see it is disabled now. Now here we will define our validation. So validation rule will be if f is the form control which we have defined below here. So this one is f. If f dot first name dot is invalid, not is invalid, just invalid, and f dot first name dot touched or f dot first name dot dirty, then we can display our error message. But we are going to check one more condition. If f dot first name dot errors, we are checking for the specific error. If this error is required, then we will type here p dot text danger first name is required. I have done this because maybe we have multiple validation here, like we also have a max length, something like this. then we can also handle it here. So but we just have only one condition, so that is why it is not required to use it. We can just type the message here, but it's a good practice, so I'm going to follow it. So just copy this thing here and paste this thing here. Okay, so instead of first name, let's type here last name, last name, last name, last name, and last name, and here is last name too. So you can see if I click on this, then this, you can see first name is required and last name is required. So if I just type A, B, you can see that's fine. So here, where is it? This submit button will work for both edit and update. So I'm just going to type here if person.id equals to 0, it means console.add log. Oops, this, there is no need to put @ console.log added else console.log updated, and at last we will reset the form. So this dot person form dot reset. Let's see A, B, B, C, and C added, and our form has been reset. So now here we just need to call this dot person store dot add person, and here we will just call this dot person store dot update person. So let's add a name here, A, B, and you can see A and B. Let's refresh it and let's see. Yeah, it's persisted. So let's add one more name again, A, B. Okay, so we are good. Now when I click on the edit button, these values should be typed here. So first name will be A and last name will be B when I click on this edit button. So how do we do that? Or just create a method here on edit person model, this dot person form dot patch value. So we will update the value of person form with this. So let's see if I click here. Oops, so we haven't called this method here. Where is it? Here on edit person A, B. Yes, so if I type here A, B, 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 and you can see A, B, B, B. Let's type here N1, L1. So something went wrong. Okay, API / people / null. So we will look into that later. So first work on this delete method. For that, just call here on delete. That's it. So let's define on delete method here. Here on delete person model, and here we will check if confirm. So it will open a confirm dialog, confirm, and here we will have our confirmation message. So our confirmation message will be, are you sure to delete a person with name, let's say first name and last name. So person dot first name and person dot last name. If someone has clicked on OK, then we will delete the record. Person form dot, not person form, person store dot delete person, person, not person, person dot id. That's it. So let's delete it, edit, and you can see it is asking. So let's click on cancel. That's fine, it did not delete it. Let's click on delete and click on OK. So it's gone. So let's refresh and it is really gone. So now let's see what happened that time. A B, okay, A B, and we have edited AB to AAB, AB to ABB. Okay, now we have edited our record, and let's see what happens here. So we have this ID and that's it. So ID value is unknown here. Okay, now here, that's it. Now let's type here n1, n2, and yeah, so now I am getting error. Okay, so basically let's delete this thing. So now I know why I am getting error, sorry, how I am getting error. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here. Let's see what is happening. Okay, so let's put a not breakpoint, just type here console.log added and updated. Make sure we have defined our method right. So add person dot add person. So we are calling add person here, that's good, and we are calling update person here, that is also good. Let's update this thing A1 B1. Now let's try to add it. Oops, let's say A11 AB1 added. Why it is saying added? Okay, updated. Let's change it to A11 B11 and update it. Okay, now A1 B1, and you can see it has called updated method again. So basically I think what is happening is value of id should be 0, but value of id is nothing here. Let's refresh this thing and let's see. So at initial, the value of id is 0 here, but when we are adding something or we are updating something, its value is not 0. So let's see what happens if we add some value A1 B1, and let's go here. Right now its value is 0, so now its value is gone, A1 B1. So if I type here A2 B2, I will still get error. Okay, so now I think we have find the culprit. So how to reset a form? Because when I am resetting the form, its value is gone. So here, instead of resetting, let's just say this dot person form dot patch value id 0 first name this, last name this. So it is a workaround. Maybe it's not a perfect solution, but it is a workaround for this video because I don't have that much time to Google about this. So let's see what happens now. Let's say let's delete this guy first. Okay, let's delete this, and let's add A, B. Okay, let's do N, M. Okay, so now I get it. So instead of calling this thing, we just have to call reset on reset. That's good. Let's delete this. Let's type here A. Let's refresh this thing first. A, B. Okay, A, B. But now we have a problem that these things are coming. A, B, and here let's just say A1, B1. And let's edit these things, A11, B11, and B1, C1. So now everything is working, but this thing is looking ugly. So let's try one thing here. This dot person form dot reset. Okay, now let's delete this thing, this thing. Let's refresh this guy. A, B, C, D, C, D. Let's update this to E, F. Okay, now add C and D. So we are good, and it's all thanks to this workaround. Let's delete this thing, let's delete this thing, and let's delete this thing. Okay, where is it? Okay, let's add some genuine values like Jack Sparrow. Okay, and Tony Stark. Okay, we have successfully completed this tutorial, and congratulations to you and me for completing this tutorial. If you find this video helpful, then please hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe this channel to get more videos like this. If you visit to GitHub and if you are using this repository, please consider to star it. It helps to better visibility in the GitHub for that project. So that's it for now. See you next time.